All right, you guys, by now you have gotten through the Illustrator worksheet and you are ready to start your Illustrator project, which is an icon set. Right off the top of the bat, I wanted to jump into the icon set draft requirements because that's the first place I would start if I was a designer and working on this project to turn into my client. So you'll see here on my screen, I've gone ahead and gone back into Canvas. I'm going to upload or pull up the icon set draft, and we're going to work through this. Now, we've already talked about the need for the project report and where to get that template. So now I want to go down to this draft design. As a designer, this type of information is going to be what you would receive at the point you sit down with a client after them accepting your bid. You want to go ahead and get all the information from them. Usually the designer asks a lot of questions to clarify things because clients don't normally know exactly what they want. In this case, because this is a course, we have specific requirements that we want to outline. So those need to be followed really very carefully so that you get the best grade possible. Okay, so on your draft design, you need to include 100% of the project's minimum requirements to get the best grade that you can. With that being said, remember those design principles that we have covered in those first weeks of reading, okay? The contrast, the repetition, the alignment, and the proximity. Those are all things that are going to be used in this icon set in addition to the information you've learned about color, okay? So review your text, think back to those rules because they need to be implemented in the design process here. You'll go ahead and open up Illustrator. You'll use the information from your project report, okay, about your audience, your message, and your sketches, and then you'll double check to make sure that your design includes all of these minimum requirements, and then you'll submit your drafts as a PDF to me, okay? So with that said, here's the little bit of the project overview. We'll read through all of this. These are some good examples and bad examples. There's one bad example. I am not exactly sure what I can see the differences. My guess is why this is a bad example, and you can take a closer look at it if you scroll in once you're in this section in Canvas. But these are really, really thin lines. It looks a little bit more like a coloring book with these stroke lines as opposed to this example, which is basically the same set of icons. These look a little bit more professional though because they did not use those black thin lines to make it look like a coloring book, okay? You can see that same type of thing happening. This set of fruit is very simplistic. It is just what I would call a stroke icon, very similar to these camping icons. However, this set of animals, this set of sea creatures, and this set of musical items, they're all a little bit more clip artish when it comes to icons. And you'll see in industry, we're seeing a whole lot of both types, the stroke outlines only, and then also this more clip art feature. Okay, so that's up to you as a designer to decide which one goes better for your audience and the brand that you're trying to portray, okay? So take a look at those, pay attention to that. If you want more examples on Pinterest, these are some great places, and then also some past student work so you have an idea of what's out there. By all means, be creative. This is your opportunity to shine, okay? Minimum expectations. Everything needs to be BYU Idaho appropriate. You need to use Illustrator to create it. You need 4 to 6 original icons. What I recommend to students is that you start with 6. That way you can easily eliminate 1 or 2 if they are just being absolutely too much of a stress to work with, okay? That's what I do with my own clients even now. That's what I'd recommend for you as you're just getting started in Illustrator. Each icon needs to communicate a single message, okay? If the message is too detailed, then we won't be able to tell what it is because icons need to be able to scale. You may see an icon really large on a billboard. You may also see it really small on a computer screen or on your phone. So think about what that is. As you make it big or small, do you lose the detail or does it get too muddied as you shrink it down so that you can't really tell what it is, okay? So that's something to think about, the detail of that as well as the single message. A stop sign means stop, okay? You can't use the word stop, but if you see a red octagon on a little tiny post, you know that's a stop sign, okay? Then I want the set of icons need to be consistently designed. That's what I was talking about. Is it a stroke icon? Is it more of a clip art design, that type of thing. And then you need to be consistent. Notice on these camping icons, the stroke width doesn't change. All of a sudden they're really thick here and really thin somewhere else. It stays consistent, and that goes back to one of those, the repetition, like that design rule that we've talked about, okay? Then also the following needs to really be adhered to closely. No text, no gradients, no drop shadows, no pixels or raster effects, okay? Any of those cool tools in Illustrator, They are awesome, but they're not to be used for this project, and I cannot give you a decent grade if you use them. That said, as we jump over into Illustrator, I will be showing you some ways that you can add in a drop shadow effect, which is actually a lot more realistic, and it will give you a chance to use the pen tool and practice some of these tools that you've just learned in the worksheet, all right? With that said, I'm going to go ahead and move out of Canvas and jump into Illustrator, and I will show you the beginnings of my mock project so you can get moving in the right direction as quickly as possible. Okay, so just for the sake of getting a bird's eye view, I am in Illustrator. You should be able to see my set of icons. I have decided to go ahead and do a mock project for the company kayak.com. You guys are probably familiar with it. It's one of those websites that gives you the best prices for hotels and plane flights and all those great things. They want to do kind of a retro feel, and they want to go ahead and give that road trip vibe because we are coming into summer, all right? So that is my client. That is kind of the demographic and the idea behind where my icons are coming from. You can see right here there are two very different looks. The bottom set is all a stroke icon, like what I had talked about and pointed out with the camping and the fruit icons back in Canvas for those examples, okay? The one on the top, they're the exact same icons, but they are definitely more clip art looking, all right? So with that said, you can see that creating your set of icons, if you do it right, you could easily change over to just a plain stroke at the point that you want that to be the case as you're refining, okay? So just because you start in one place doesn't mean that you can't end up in another. I'll be honest, when I created the set of icons, the top icons are what I was heading for, that more clip art look. And in the end, I ended up creating the bottom set that are all on those round medallion backgrounds with the shadowing, because that really showcased a very traditional stroke looking icon, all right? But that is the end goal, and what you're seeing on the rest of the screen is probably what you're most interested in getting started with. So with that said, if you're filling out the project report, you will know that you need to include a picture of your sketches. Let me show you that, and then I'll get you started with where I would head right off the top of the bat, okay? But this way, these images, you'll have an idea of where we're headed, because a lot of times when you're brand new at something, it's easier to see, okay, here's the end goal, and then see how all the pieces come together. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I will tell you the shortcut keys. They are not things you have to know, but they're useful. To zoom in and out, you hit Command plus to zoom in and Command minus to zoom out on a Mac. And then the exact same thing, if you're on a PC, you're going to hit Control minus to zoom out and Control plus to zoom in, okay? So anytime you hear me say Command, if you're on a PC, just know that Command means hit Control instead. So here is the top picture. These are my sketches. I told you a little bit about my demographic before, my audience, my clients. So you can see I wrote down my clients, kayak.com. We're doing a summer campaign, a little bit of idea, that vintage road trip feel. You guys are probably familiar with what kayak is. I told you before. And then I just started with a simple list. I listed out car, camera, road sign. I finished up with places you could go. The desert with a cactus, the beach, mountains, sunglasses, surfboard, ice chest, open road. Those are all things that for me kind of quantify like that road trip vibe, okay? Then I started sketching at that point. My suggestion is that you sketch pretty much anything that comes to mind right off the top of the bat. So I always start with a written list, and then I kind of sketch. I often turn on music while I'm doing all of this. Sometimes I do it out away from my desk. Sometimes I do it at my desk. Sometimes I sketch all digitally. I have a Wacom tablet and a pen tool, so I will actually sketch in Illustrator sometimes. But I know that those are tools a lot of people don't have, so the old-fashioned way is oftentimes my favorite, and really it works just great. So what I started doing is just sketching out the different icons. And one of the reasons I wanted to show you this is that I am by no means an artist. So if you're thinking that you're going to be terrible at this assignment or that this class is not for you, don't fear. Okay, I don't count myself as an artist. It wasn't until just recently that I tell anybody that I am a graphic artist or a designer. People that I work for know that, but I don't tell anybody that I'm an artist because all of a sudden they think I am really artistic and super awesome and cool. I had a couple roommates who actually are artists when I was in college. They are amazing illustrators, and I can't even rival them in their skills, okay? They do real stuff, and this is the best I can do. So this looks like something I would draw on the back of a Sunday program to entertain my kids during sacrament meeting, all right? But you'll want to try a couple of different ways to do things. You can tell these sunglasses, they don't look very good, but they will eventually. And then on the cars, there are different ways cars can look. You can see here I started off with kind of a whole like VW Beetle shape. And then I was like, ooh, no, a convertible. That seemed a little bit more hard. I didn't do so hot on the seat, but you can kind of tell that's what that is. And then look, what I ended up with was a VW bus, which was kind of a comparison between the two. I liked the Beetle. That got me going on the VW bus. I kind of like this convertible look. I kind of headed more towards a beach theme. So you can see how this is going to start progressing. Okay. So don't get freaked out if things don't necessarily go right how you think it's supposed to. Okay. Let me move this over. I'm going to zoom out again, Command minus to do that, or Control minus if you're on a PC. And with that said, let's jump into the creation of your artboard. You guys have not created an artboard really yet because you've just been doing the worksheet. And sometimes that is the most intimidating part. So this is what I usually create when I work on icons. Remember that we want to create our icons that are consistent in scale. So when you turn them in, if you have something really big and something really small, I'm going to have to mark you down because icons need to be consistent. Think about when you see them on a website. Maybe you see them, 3 across with some words underneath each one and then buttons to click on a website if you go somewhere like that. When you're searching the internet, so to keep them to scale, I go ahead and create one icon per artboard, okay? So you can see on my finished product, they're just on one big page. But when I'm designing, I keep them on separate artboards. So just so that we can get to this point, I'm going to go ahead and start a new document so you have the right idea. You'll open up Illustrator. You'll go up to File up at the top and hit New. You guys should be somewhat familiar with this screen. Right here, you'll do pixels. I am still an individual who thinks in inches, so I always do the conversions because I just can't handle it in my head exactly what 288 pixels will be. 4 inches is a totally decent size, okay? So 4 inches, you can switch it back to pixels if you want, but just know it's very easy to go back and forth in between those two. We don't need a bleed at all, so we're going to go ahead and hit 0, and that should change all of it. If this link is hit, all of these will change when you change one of them, okay? If you unlink that, then you'll be able to switch. These could be bigger or different sizes, whatever you need. I keep mine because it's square. It doesn't matter on your orientation. And then we need, I suggested 6 icons so that you can work on 6. And when at least 2 don't work out, you can always just junk the 2 that you think are the least effective. Okay. Then you'll hit create. You will see right here, this set it up in a different circumstance. You might even have just one straight vertical column or horizontal column of artboards. Okay. So at this point, you've created basically your artboards for your icon set. If you want to switch it to be vertical, 2 columns like how mine was, you'll hit this artboards button over here. Just so that we're 100% clear, and I probably should stop and explain this. Remember, these tools over here, if they don't look exactly right, you're going to want to go to Window, Workspace, and go into Essentials or Essentials Classic. Okay, it's always good to reset it in case you think you're missing something. You can do that throughout the project. These over here, these are basically tools that I use all the time. So I've gone ahead and dropped them into my standard workspace. But these are all accessible. So if you wanted to go to artboards, if it's over here, you could click here and it will bring out the flyout menu. Or you can always go to Window and then go to artboards and it will bring up the flyout again. Usually if it's not over here, it will fly out just in the middle. So it'll just pop straight up, okay? At the point that you want to drag something over into it, let's see, what don't I have so that I can show you? Let's say that I want to work on the swatch panel. So I'll go to Window, I'll go down to swatches. It says that it's there. Let's go to type. Window type. I always forget on this one. You've got to go ahead and click character. So this pops out. Let's say that it's not, it will pop out just like this, okay? So at this point, if it pops out and you want to drag it into one of these panels, all you simply have to do is hold this top gray bar, click and hold, then drag. See how it highlights? If I want it in this first bar, it goes here. If I want it in the second one, it goes here. And all of a sudden, character's back, okay? So then you'll just simply click on that and the flyout will come out easily. So this is kind of a shortcut But any of these things you need will always be window, and then they start right here, all in alphabetical order. All right. So with that said, let me go ahead and show you how you would get back to changing your artboards around so it fits a little bit better on your page. You'll go to artboards over here, or go up to window and go to artboards. Okay. Then you'll see artboards 1 through 6. If I click on this middle one, I can tell that's artboard 2. It changes based on what artboard you're clicking on. All right. You can go in and name these if you'd prefer. So this one could be surfboard or whatever I wanted it to be. Right now though, I just want it to be how it is. If I want to change or rearrange my artboards, these 3 stacked lines will give you some additional flyout options. All right. I want to rearrange my artboards. I want 2 columns. Here you can see that they go in rows. I want them to be columns instead. So this is grid by column, grid by row, arranged just in one row, arranged just in one column. So I want grid by column, and I want 2 rows or 3 rows. So that means it will go 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll have 3 rows basically and 2 columns. And then you'll hit OK. And there you can see I've got my 3 columns. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Remember, that's that command minus. And at this point, you probably remember, excuse me, back to this page. So at this point, you'll see these colors right here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see a little bit better what we're talking about. I'll hit these arrows. This basically collapses any flyout menus. Okay, so the 2 arrows collapse it. The 3 stacked lines will give you an additional pop out for what else you can do with that panel. Okay, I've chosen my color palette. If you've done any searching online or even watched the tutorial videos, he may have talked about putting these in as swatches. You can see my swatches over here in the right hand corner. Okay, these are different palettes. You can actually save palettes. This is a Brights palette that I saved. It pops up every time I work in Illustrator. So that's something that you'll see. You can access if you want. For me, I like things all to be in my workspace instead of having to come over. And I'll show you why. So if let's say that I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle and I want a color, then it's instead of having to go way over here and hitting the red, Command Z undoes everything. Okay, so Command Z or Control Z will take you back a step. So let's say at this point, I want to turn it red. I save time. Instead of going this far, I can just click right here, but I'll need the eyedropper tool first to do that. So I click the eyedropper tool or hit Command I and then just go right here. So you can see this distance to travel is much shorter than this distance, and that's why I always use my color palette just right here in my workspace. To create this, you'll just create your squares. Remember, rectangles, circles, whatever shape you want works fine as a palette. I like squares. So again, to create that, you will hit the rectangle tool. If you want an actual square, you'll hold the shift button down while you click and drag to your size. Okay. Then you can hit Command or Control C to copy, and then Command or Control F to paste in front. F means in front. V is always take you back to the selection tool. So you'll take your selection tool and you'll just click on this and click and hold and drag down. And then you'll just Command C, Command V, that will paste it out. And then you'll just keep lining them up. And then at this point, if I wanted my colors to change, I would choose this one. I want to go get the eyedropper tool or hit Command I, then select the orange. I'll go back to my selection tool on the left-hand column tool palette. Hit the next box, get the eyedropper tool, go over and hit yellow. Okay, I have a sheet of shortcut keys if that's your thing. A lot of students just say it confuses them. There are some that are quick ones, so you'll hear me mention those. And I do give them in my tutorial videos, but I'll put a link in the discussion and conversation board for this week so that you can see the shortcut keys in case you want to print it out so that you have them. They have like a most used ones and then some more specifics. Adobe's really great about putting those together, and they're super useful. The other great thing is they stay consistent throughout all the different programs. So if you learn them here, you can use them again in Photoshop. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and delete this color palette. You can see my color palette. You saw how I created my artboards, and now it's time to really jump into it. I went ahead and dragged my image that I took a picture of my sketches into my workspace. You don't have to do that. You can just have your sketches right there by your desk as you work. But in case you want to do that, one way to do it is File, excuse me, allergies are getting me. Hit place, and then you'll go and select whatever your image is, and it will go ahead and put it straight in, okay? Or if you've got a Mac, I know it works for Mac, you can just drag it straight across and drop it in. So the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about, I know this video is a little long, but hopefully this will help. Remember, I said I'm not an artist, okay? And I proved it by letting you see my sketches. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the Shape Builder tool. I know that this is covered in the videos, but it's worth talking about because we use the Shape Builder tool, but there's something about the Shape Builder tool that you need to know, and also something that really is important as a graphic designer, okay? So this mindset. If you're not an artist like me, then this is really helpful. Every item that you see in the world is made up of shapes. This is pretty obvious. It seems really simplistic, but I don't know how much you think about it. I know that when I first started as a graphic designer, I did not think about it at all. So when I sat down to create something like a camera image, I thought, I have no clue how to draw a camera. Are you kidding? So I want you to take a really good look at this camera. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it really closely. Look at the camera. There's some shapes that we can tell straight off the bat, right? We've got a circle, we've got a rectangle, we've got another rectangle square over here. The camera itself is a big rectangle. Then there looks like some type of trapezoid thing on top. But really a trapezoid is just a rectangle, right? But with these points scooted out a little bit wider at the bottom. So I want to basically show you how I would start making this finished product of a camera with the Shape Builder tool off of my sketch, okay? Here's how I'm going to do it. The first thing I'm going to work with is the Shape Builder tool. So with the rectangle tool. If you click this little tick mark down here and hold it, you can see there's rectangles, rounded rectangles, ellipses, polygons. It's all stuff you're familiar with, right? Just a reminder. My camera is going to go in this first box. So we're just going to start with the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw the big base for the rectangle. Right now it's in yellow. I'm kind of crazy. I like working in black and white to start with. I add color last, okay? So I'm going to keep things in black and white just for the sake of this project, or for this demonstration, so you can see how simplistic this really is. So there's the base of my camera. Now the button, I need a little rectangle, okay? So go back to your rectangle tool, select it. Remember, if we want it to be perfectly square, which is what I want for that button, I hold down Shift and hold Shift down while I click and drag. Okay, that looks like a good button. At that point, let's see, I need a larger square for like the flash of the camera. So back to the rectangle tool, I'm just going to draw it up here. So that looks like a good flash size button. These all can be adjusted later, okay? Now a circle, that shouldn't be too difficult. We go back to the rectangle tool, click and hold so the flyout comes out. Go ahead and grab the ellipse tool. I'm going to draw my circle kind of off right here. Hold Shift to get that perfect circle. The lens is kind of big, you know, on those big DSLR cameras. So I'm going to create that bigger circle. There's my lens. And then finally that trapezoid. Now that might give me a little bit of an issue, but you guys can do it, I promise. Hit the rectangle tool right over in the left-hand panel. I want it to start off as a rectangle, so I don't need to hold Shift. Then with this selected, you're going to go up to the top here. This one that we use all the time is the selection tool. The direct selection tool is a pretty tricky thing. You guys, it's fun to use, and you guys covered it. So you're going to click this one. At this point with this selected, see each of these points? If I click on it once, then click and hold, I can move it. You see how that drags, okay? So I can create my trapezoid. So there's one side of my trapezoid for that top flash part, you know, that pops up. So then I use that same direct selection tool. I click, then I click and hold, and I drag it out, okay? Then at this point, go back to your selection tool, okay, because we want to select the whole thing, not just specific points. And you can see, if I start to move this around, I've got the makings of my camera. I'm going to change the colors on these two so that you can see what it looks like. But at this point, that flash probably needs to be adjusted. That seems a little bit big, that little box over in the center. So we'll take that back over that way. This button does seem a little bit big, so we'll go ahead and drag it down in size. Maybe bump it down a little bit. But at this point, you can start to see how these different shapes are going to make this camera, right? Now remember, I had started off with the clip art look, okay? But to create this clip art look, I actually am using a black stroke to give it kind of a vintagey feel. and it's not exactly like that color book like the coloring book stroke, because it doesn't match the exact outline. You can see if I zoom in, I've got kind of that white edge in some of the areas, so it gives it a little more hand-drawn look. Okay, this is an option. To make sure that you create a stroke though, right now, if I wanted this outline, okay, what would happen, let's just say that I take my direct selection tool, I click and drag to select all those items, and then remember over here with our color, our fill and our stroke, let's go here. I want to make sure that it's black. Okay, so they're all black. Let's say that I just want it to look like this camera down here with the stroke. So I would just go up here to my black box that's filled and my strokes, which non-existent right now on the left-hand bar. You're just going to hit swap the fill and the stroke. This looks like a camera, but it's not very good. And I've got these extra lines, okay? So this is where the shape builder tool would come into play. Once I have some of these pieces aligned perfectly, okay, I want to center align that so it looks really good. Make that go away. These two pieces, I could totally use the shape builder tool. Remember, it's right here, the two circles and the little arrow where you drag across. So you click that and you would drag those two, right? So now all of a sudden we've gotten rid of those nasty lines right there that make it not look so put together, but I've still got it here. So you'd work your way through using the tools to create that camera outline, okay? Now remember, right in the center, this circle is here, and you could do the stroke, right? And that would work. The other thing is let's say that we wanted this to be filled. Let's say that all of this, once we got it set, we wanted it to be filled. So at this point, all of a sudden you lose this camera lens. So what you could do is use the Pathfinder tool, which I believe is shown in the video as well. So you would go up to Window and go down to Pathfinder and click on it, or I've got it over here in my flyout, okay? I'm going to go ahead and select the circle and the outline of my camera and my little flash, okay? So the first thing, whatever you want cut out needs to be on top. So I'm going to select both of those. When you select multiple items, you just hold down Shift, then use your selection tool to click on the items, okay? Go Object, Arrange, and then bring to front. Then go ahead and hold down Shift again and hit your back line, the outline, okay? So the rest of my camera body. Then in the Pathfinder tool, you can unite or minus front. If I want this to be empty space so that any color or whatever I want to put behind it shows through, then you're going to go ahead and hit minus front, and all of a sudden you can see there's nothing in that space anymore. There's no black, no fill, okay? So it's empty. So if I were to draw a rectangle that was yellow behind it, all of a sudden you could see that yellow rectangle would show through. This is empty. So it's like we cut it out or we erased that section, okay? So there you go. The Pathfinder tool and the shape builder tool. And remember, all shapes are created, all complex items are created by really simple shapes, okay? So you're not behind the power curve. You just have to stop and look at your sketches and say, okay, what shapes could I use to create that? Now, with that camera, things are pretty easy. Rectangles, circles, that trapezoid maybe threw us just a little bit, but they were still pretty simple. The second thing that I want you to think about is looking for symmetry. So if you have something that seems difficult to create, I want you to look for symmetry, okay? This interstate sign is a place that I used symmetry to create it, okay? I created one half. Imagine if I drew a line straight through and I created one half, then I copied and reflected it to create the second half, and then I used the shape builder tool to combine them to make them one image, okay? On top of that, when I created it initially, you can see that I've got this red up here and the blue down below, right? So there's two pieces going on this direction. But if we cut it straight in half, you can see that we've created essentially the same thing twice. So to do that, I want you to take a look. Right here, you would use the pen tool, all right? I just eyeballed this, and you can do lots of adjustments, but I'm going to zoom in so that you can see. Let's drag this over too so that you can really see what we're working on. And bring it to the front. So it covers up my camera for a second. And zoom back over to where you can see this really well. Okay. So this part's created by the pen tool, and I pretty much just eyeballed one swoop. So I selected my pen tool, I clicked once, then I click again, and I drag, right, to create those handlebars. That's what Brother Libert taught, okay? So at this point, you want to get rid of this handlebar, just click right there. I also, this is set to fill, and I want it to set to stroke. So just go back over here and swap it, okay? I'm going to change it to black just for the sake of being able to see it better. So at this point, I've got one line, okay? You're going to select it with the selection tool, okay? So click off of the pen tool, go to the selection tool, make sure that that bounding box pops up. Then I'm going to hit Command C and Command V, and you can see I've got the same exact thing, but I need it to go the opposite direction, right? So at this point, I'm going to have it selected, go to Object, Transform, Reflect, okay? Then it will give me to do it horizontal or vertical at an angle. We want to do it vertical. We just want it to be the mirror image. So we'll hit OK. It does that straight off the bat, and then I'm going to drag it and drop it. Okay, so there we've got the first part of our interstate sign. I want these two connected. So you can see that right now there are two. You'd go to the Pathfinder or go to Window Pathfinder. Okay. And then these first two boxes is Unite. We're going to hit Unite. Right now it's being a stink for me. So you can see you could combine those. When I hit Unite, it draws the reverse of the shape, and we don't need that. But even just grabbing both of them and hitting Command G would create that. Okay, so you'd have the whole top portion. This portion right here, I actually eyeballed with the pen tool too. So the easiest way to do this, you could go that direction. Or remember how I talked about symmetry? I would go ahead and pen tool from this. Let's start just from the top. So I'd start from the top, if it will let me do it. There we go. And drag out, and I'd create that piece. Then I'm going to go ahead and click the handlebar by clicking the dot. So I get rid of this handlebar, okay? Then I need to create kind of that point, right? So I'm going to click down, see how it pops up that pink line. That shows me that it is right in line with the center point. So I'm just going to click and drag. Okay. Whoops. So line up and drag. Then let go, and then I'd click that point. And at this point, I'm going to go straight back up. Then I hit my selection tool, and instead of my stroke, I want to use a fill. You click the object, go back to object, and go to transform, reflect. Remember, we just want to take it to a vertical because we want it to be a mirror image. Okay. Let's see, I forgot to copy it. So you need to make sure that you copy it. Then transform, object, transform, reflect. There we go. Now there's two. So you line them up. Okay, you can see even that mine overlap with just a little bit, right? But you want to make sure at the top that they're equal. So you're going to grab those and then just use your shape builder tool again to combine them. Okay, so there's a lot that you can do between the Pathfinder and the shape builder tool, and then with your rectangle tool that provides you with those other shapes, and then also with the pen tool to create any kind of in-between items. Okay, so that's where you would start with that. The same thing, the trees, you can see that they're 3 triangles with a rectangle at the bottom. So this is all pretty easy. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about was to simplify construction. I showed you a little bit here on how to simplify that by looking at symmetry, but I wanted to show you here on this map how easy this could really be. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh my goodness, I've got to create trapezoids, and then I've got to reflect them across a horizontal line, and then I've got to do 2 of these and create them again. But instead, I went ahead and said, let's make this a little bit easier. Let's make all straight lines. So I used my pen tool, and the first thing I created was this zigzag line up top. So I select my pen tool, I create my zigzag. You can see I use that pink line to help me see when I'm equal. And you slide it in just a little bit, but the whole thing's eyeballed. Again, it's creating my fill, so just go over and swap the fill to stroke. Okay, if I want this last little dot to move, simply click off, then go to your icon tool or to the direct selection tool. Then you're going to click once, then click and hold, and you can adjust, okay? Once you have that, go back to your direct selection tool. So there's the top of my map. I'm going to hit Command C to copy or Control C on a PC, then Command V to paste or Control V to paste. And then you can see I've lined up my map. So there is the top and the bottom of my map. At this point, all I need to do is go back to the pen tool and connect this line, and you can see you can just select just that piece and be able to copy it, or the easiest thing to do is just go in and pen tool once they're unselected. Whoops. Doesn't like me today, you guys. Okay. So at this point, you're going to create your line from here to here. Okay. If you click on it with that, it will go ahead and delete your point. So then I like to hit the direct selection tool, deselect, okay? Then go back to your pen tool again and draw that line again. Does that make sense? Then you escape to take off that handle. So if you want to draw another line, click, click, it will draw a handle. Just hit the escape button. Then you can draw your next line. Click, click to connect your point. There's that handle, escape, and then just close it up. Okay? At that point, go back to your selection tool, and there's your map. All right? So you can see how the process can be pretty easy. Use those pink lines to help you keep consistency in form and show you kind of those right angles. Remember the shape builder tool. All shapes that are more complex are made up of simpler shapes. And then, of course, I want you to look for symmetry in ways that you can simplify your design by creating simple items or simple strokes first, and then moving further along. Now, let's see. Other than that, this video has gotten pretty long, so I'm going to stop at this point. But you can see the sunshine and the waves. This is pretty easy. The waves were created by the pen tool. The sunshine was created with the shape tool. These little lines were created by the pen tool. So you've got the general idea. All of the mountains and trees, they're all triangles. This little snow was added by the pen tool. I zoomed in really close to be able to make those curved lines and then dropped it in. So pretty easy to start with. The VW bus was the most difficult and took the most time. But honestly, I started off with a rectangle and then I just rounded those edges in. Rectangles for the bumpers, circles for the wheels and the hubcaps, rectangles for the windows. Then I kind of curved out my lines. So you can see, not too difficult once you start looking at shapes. With that, if you're looking to create strokes and this more traditional look on the colors, this is a really good way to add in repetition throughout. Repetition's a little bit more difficult here. It's harder to see, but the repetition is the colors. You can see this blue happens consistently. The turquoise happens in 2 places. The green happens in 2 places. The orange and the brown are the only ones that don't happen in 2 places, and that red. So another way to add really obvious consistency and repetition is by doing just a stroke. They're all white icons on a colored background. The stroke is all the same. You can see I varied that just a little bit here in this VW bus. If the stroke was that thick as it is in the other ones, this VW bus would just look like a bunch of mud. Okay, so I also streamlined my sun and waves to just waves, but instead of sticking to the blue, I went and did that orange to give me that sunshine effect that goes with the beach. All right, so I will demonstrate how to create these drop shadows in another video. I'll post it a little bit later. Right now for your draft though, just start working on sketches and then getting basic shapes onto your artboards and picking a color palette. All right. Remember the Pathfinder tool, the shape builder tool, the pen tool, the rectangle tool, and then look for basic shapes, symmetry, and ways that you can simplify the construction. Okay, you guys are doing awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing your drafts. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.